Okay, Shobhya, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to our Thursday Forum on Migration and Diaspora. This is a seminar series organized by our esteemed professors of the MA in Migration and Diaspora of Indira Gandhi National Open University. Today, we are honored to have among us Professor Ehsanullah, who is an Associate Professor of Geography, Environment and Development at the University of Brunei Darussalam. Professor Ehsan holds a PhD in Asian and International Studies from the City University of Hong Kong. He has also completed a PDF from the University of Ottawa and McMaster University, Canada. Professor Ehsan has an extensive research portfolio. He has worked with prestigious institutions such as the City University of Hong Kong, IPH at the University of Ottawa, McMaster University, St. Mary's University, Dalhousie University in Canada, the American University of Cairo, Osnabrück University, Germany, and the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand. His research areas include migration and mobilities, intercultural encounters and development with a geographic focus on Asia. His research areas also includes a theoretical focus on globalization and neoliberalism, development and human rights, transnationalism, gender, intersectionality, and the everyday life. Professor Ehsan has published 15 books, 70 research articles in leading academic journals, and 45 book chapters. As a researcher, practitioner, and professor specializing in migration, refugees, and development, Professor Ehsan has dedicated his career to understanding and addressing the multiple challenges faced by displaced people. With his academic background, he has contributed insights to the field while actively engaging in practical efforts to improve the lives of those affected by migration. He is motivated to bridge divides and promote cooperation on a global scale. Before I hand over this forum to Professor Ehsan, I would like to quickly remind everyone to please ensure that your mics are switched off. You can post your questions or comments on the chat. I will open the floor for questions after the talk. So without any further ado, Professor Ehsan, I welcome you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. It's very generous introduction. I don't know why did you get all this information, but I'm like humbled. But thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this seminar series. And excuse me, because I'm still jet lagged. I just arrived from Canada and I already feel like I am sleepy. And I was planning to really prepare some slides for you to share with, but I didn't. But I have some notes and I'll be reading them out. And I was told that I have 45 minutes. It's too long for me.
And reduce.
but it's okay. We can, yeah, when I feel like stopping, then I will stop. And I guess by this time, you can like raise your hands or you can stop me anytime. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much again. And I was actually planning to talk about, because the topic I was given by Dr. Sahu, like Bangladeshi diaspora, is so broad. I really didn't know what actually I should be talking about. But maybe that overall Bangladeshi diaspora, their struggles, this and that. But I thought, no, better I do, like I was planning to do a research, and I've started actually doing a research on Bangladeshi diaspora in the UK, Sylhetese exceptionalism. I know those who are political scientists, so you'll be asking questions about exceptionalism, because we know when you talk about exceptionalism, the American exceptionalism. So I know it's not going to be a very structured one, but let me talk about it so I can have some ideas, some comments from you, and I can enrich that one, and I can have a very solid the idea on what I'm going to do. So the title, though, like I said, is very, at the initial level, the Bangladeshi diaspora in the UK, United Kingdom, and Sylheti exceptionalism. And we understand that when you talk about migration or diaspora, we already know the factors behind their intention or the volition to move to other country. And sometimes in conceptualizing migration and diaspora, we sometimes conflate, sometimes overlap with the ideas and the notions of migration is all about, what diaspora is all about. And of course, I'm not going into the definitions or conceptualizations, and I understand that you all know about all this kind of thing. But what I will be focusing on fundamentally, how and why and when the Bangladeshis moved to the UK. This is a bit different from what we understand about the migration volitions and the trajectories, and why Sylhetis, and when you talk about the migrants or diaspora in the UK, the first word that comes to mind is Sylhetis. So why I'm talking about exceptionalism, and of course, like we understand the diaspora. When you talk about diaspora, that refers to the dispersed communities, and this is fundamentally different from the concept of migration. Migration is sometimes individual or in groups, but for the diaspora communities, obviously we'll be talking about it in order for us to have a solid kind of conceptualizations about on diaspora. And it involves like complex networks of identity, obviously, memory, belonging, and shaping individuals' experiences of transnationalism and hybridity. And Bangladesh, when you talk about Bangladeshi diaspora, they are spread all over the world, obviously, and it reflects the different routes of migration from Bangladesh. And primarily, this is nothing new though, primarily due to the economic opportunities, and migrants have established communities in different countries. In the United States, for example, in the United Kingdom and Canada, and many countries in Europe as well, and Australia, Middle East, and thus they become part of diaspora community at some point of time. And the diaspora community maintains close ties with the home country. This is another important component of understanding diaspora. And they engage in remittances, obviously, and investments and cultural exchanges to bridge geographical distances. However, and their experiences are also characterized by some challenges, as we know, like integration, discriminations, and cultural preservation. So these kind of things are always with the people who are living beyond their country of origin. And despite this, and Bangladeshi diaspora continues to thrive. We understand that when we see it, and enrich both their host communities and their homeland. And for Bangladeshis, they started to move in large numbers, significant numbers, following the independence of the country in 1971. Perhaps most of us know about it. And economic factors, including poverty, unemployment, and limited opportunities, were primarily the drivers for the triggers for migration. And many Bangladeshis sought better livelihoods. And it's a very, I know that this is a very, it's a sort of motherhood kind of statements, but still, and many Bangladeshis sought better livelihoods abroad, particularly in the Gulf countries where oil boom industry provided employment opportunities. And at some point of time, the political instability, natural disasters, and floods and cyclones, and social factors such as overpopulations also contributed to migration or migration volition. Over time, the Bangladeshi diaspora expanded globally and driven not only by economic factors, but also by family reunifications, education, asylum seeking, due to political persecutions. And political persecutions, obviously, this has increased in the last 15 years And we have the data, but it's not the focus of the talk now. So we are not going to talk about it. And today, Bangladeshi diaspora is one of the largest and most widespread, one of the most widespread in the world, with estimates of size varying due to different methodologies and definitions of diaspora. And as of recent estimates, there are approximately 11 million Bangladeshi migrants are living abroad. Obviously, migrants and diasporas are a very different thing. But a significant of them is found in the countries, in the United States, as I mentioned a while ago, and where there are around 700,000 Bangladeshi Americans in the United Kingdom, around 600,000. So, and a sizable community exists in Canada, many countries in Europe, mainly in Italy, and in Southeast Asia as well, in Malaysia, and some other parts of the country. And I'll be spending some time to talk about them, the Bangladeshis, in fact, the Siletis, what their trajectories and roots, and how did they make it to the UK. And statistics say, like in 1951, there are only 2,000 Bangladeshis, and today it stood like around 600,000. And Britain's Bangladeshi communities are overwhelmingly concentrated in London, and around like 54%, and the rest 46% are spread all over the rest of the UK. And if we look and the way they have moved to the UK during 1800, 1850s, and 1945, and the way the Bangladeshis move beyond the border today is very, very different. Although the Bengali community in Britain was formed obviously comparatively recently, and the history of migration from East Bengal, for example, and particularly Sylhet to Britain has considerably longer provenance. And indeed, travel between Sylhet and Britain can be traced from the 19th century onwards, in particular through the region's connections with the imperial trading routes from Calcutta. And Sylheti Lascars, of course, I'm sure that you know the word Lascar, actually fishers, the indicates connotated Indian sailors and laborers who had joined naval labor gangs and kind of thing. And so there are so many other definitions of Lascars, though, but were employed by the East India Company on trading ships between India, Burma, China, and the Malay Archipelago, and East Africa on occasional trips to Britain from early as 17th century. From 1850s onward, at the height of imperial rule, Bengali Lascars were crucial for the manning of empires, shipping lines, and large numbers of Indian sailors also worked in the engine rooms of British merchant ships during First World War. And these early imperial seafaring connections were crucial in understanding the formations of the present-day Bengali community in Britain. And they established routes between particular parts of East Bengal and East London, and set up networks of patrons, facilitators that were to prove central to later phases of migration. The district of Sylhet lay along the shipping route from Assam to Calcutta, from where the international trading ships embarked. And many young Sylheti men made the journey to Calcutta at the time, and where a network of agents and boarding houses developed, and providing links to employment on the ships and to global travels. And from the 1920s, there were a small number of settled ex-Lascars living in East London who provided similar shelter and guidance to Bengali sailors passing through London or occasionally and sometimes jumping ships. And the numbers of Bengalis in London rose through the 1930s and the period up to the end of the Second World War. And during this time, the first signs of community were apparent. The community started to appear at that time, and under the leadership of individuals as Ayub Ali, perhaps some of you know the name already, and Shah Abdul Majid Qureshi, and who together established the Indian Seamen Welfare League in Christian Street, Aldgate, in 1943. And others too on the role of the Bariwalas, the Sirang, and replicating the boarding houses and shipping agents found in Calcutta. And these early settlers, I'm not going to lengthen the discussion on the history. I'm not a historian though, and then I'll jump into the exceptionalism shortly. And these early settlers found employment in the garment industry in East London, and the restaurants in the big London hotels, and while others traveled to the Midlands and north of England to work in textile factories. This period also saw the establishment of Bengali coffee shops catering to the new arrivals, and which later became the first Sylheti-owned Indian restaurant. By 1946, there were 20 such restaurants in London. By 1960, the number has become has increased to 300, and today is over 3,000. So you see the change in the numbers of restaurants. And the end of this period also saw the establishment of the East London Mosque and Muslim burial societies in 1946. And the first halal butcher's shop was opened by Taslim Ali, who later became the first Muslim undertaker and Imam of the East London Mosque in 1956. Okay, let me touch upon a bit about the journeys post-war. The post-war migrations, although the numbers of migrants was very small, and these early patterns of migration provided the template for later migration in 1950s and 1960s. And from the end of Second World War, a number of Lascars settled in Britain and with others arriving after Indian independence and the partition in 1947. And the partition had cut Sylhet off from Calcutta, thereby reducing the opportunities for employment in shipping to such an extent that during the period 1952 to 1955, many former sailors faced destitution. And the Seamen's Union obtained passports for many to work in Britain, although this was partly blocked by the government in West Pakistan at the time. So in 1956, around 600 international passports were granted to seamen, followed by 1,000 additional passports, and others traveled through sponsorship from private institutions and on medical passports. And most came from Sylhet, along with the established routes. The routes are already established and relied on contacts or keen network to help find accommodations and work there. And there were, by 1962, there were up around 5,000 Bengalis in the UK, and drawn by the British post-war demand of cheap and skilled labor. The period from 1950s to until 1962 was a golden age for them, for migration to Britain from the subcontinent, when immigration controls were still relatively comparatively open. But situation, of course, shifted, changed in 1962 with the first Commonwealth Immigration Act. I'm sure that most of us know about it, and this restricted primary migration from the Commonwealth into three categories. One is those with a specific job to go to in Britain, those with the recognized skills or qualifications in short supply in the UK, and others with priority given to those serving with British forces in Second World War. So this encouraged Sylhetis already in Britain to seek vouchers for friends and relatives, starting a period of sustained chain migration that still is in existence. And by 1980s, the Bengali community numbered around 200,000 and today stood like around more than 600,000. Okay, let me jump into, like I'll be spending around 5 to 7 minutes on the Sylhetis exceptionalism. Let me touch upon a bit about this intriguing aspect of Bangladeshi diaspora, the Sylheti community in the United Kingdom. Over the years, this community has not only grown significantly, but also fostered a distinct sense of exceptionalism within the broader Bangladeshi diaspora narrative. Well, I'm trying to unpack what makes Sylheti diaspora in the UK unique, exploring their migration patterns, cultural identity, and reasons behind their exceptionalism. And it is still like in the making. I have not like come up with a solid theoretical framework, but it's like I said, it's in the making. And firstly, why are there so many Sylheti individuals in the UK? And we have a kind of idea already from the history and the chain migration and the kind of vouchers they used to use to bring their friends and relatives. And the roots of this migration can be traced obviously back to the historical, as I mentioned, and socioeconomic factors as well. And following the World War II, and the United UK faced a shortage of labor, prompting immigration from the British colonies, including Bangladesh. And Sylhet, a region of Bangladesh that became a significant source of migrant labor due to its like agrarian economy and the historical ties to British colonialism. And political instability and economic hardship in Bangladesh further fuel migration to the UK. The concept of exceptionalism within Sylheti diaspora is like the term implies a sense of uniqueness, of distinctiveness. Actually, that is what I'm going to concentrate on for the paper that I'm working at the moment. And the feeling of being different from broader community. And they think that they are different. And this is how they are exceptional. And this and the Sylheti diaspora members often view themselves as exceptional due to several factors. The linguistic and cultural distinctiveness plays a significant role. And their language, Sylheti language, and I still actually, I understand perhaps 10% if they speak the Sylheti. I really don't understand, but if I'm like meticulous enough to understand, so maybe 10%. So it's very distinct, and they know that. And there's a different kind of dialect. And along with the unique cultural practices and traditions, fosters a strong sense of identity among Sylheti individuals. Sometimes they say, oh, I'm Sylheti. And if you are like, for example, if I'm asked here, I'm located in Brunei, I don't say I'm from Barisal. I say I'm from Bangladesh. But for most of them, I'm from Sylhet. They don't say that they are from Bangladesh, kind of thing. And despite being part of the broader Bangladeshi community, Sylhetis often prioritize the regional identity, as like what I said, and reinforcing their exceptionalism within the diaspora. And socio-economic factors also contribute to this exceptionalism. And they have been, obviously, in many cases, have been successful.
I'm sorry, sir. Sorry to interrupt. Which other city you said? They don't say they are from Bangladesh. They say they are from which place?
Yes, the Sylhet. I'm not talking about everyone, but they prefer to giving their identity like they're from Sylhet, not from Bangladesh.
Sylhet means I do not understand still.
Oh, it's a district.
District in Bangladesh.
In Bangladesh, yes.
Okay, so they say that they are not from Bangladesh, but they're from a particular district,
Yep.
because that district may be quite, rich or whatever in any way, culturally or financially.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
That
thank
is-
you.
that
We
is-
can discuss this again. I'm sorry about that, about if I'm not clear about that. Okay, and this and the last point was like socioeconomic factors contribute to this exceptionalism, and like I said, they have been in many cases they have been very successful in various sectors in the UK, particularly in entrepreneurships and catering, restaurant industries, and this economic success has led to increased visibility and influence within the Bangladeshi diaspora and wider British society as well, and further reinforcing their sense of exceptionalism. It is important to acknowledge that exceptionalism is not without its complexities as well. And while it fosters a sense of pride and identity, it can also lead to isolation and fragmentation in the broader diaspora community. And because when I was talking to some of them, they said like, because we don't, basically the second generation and the third generation as well, they tend not to mention Bangladesh always as Siletis, and the British, the accent and whatever, they don't, even some of them don't speak Bengali or Siletis. And that has made like, when they are in a community, in a party or whatever, they feel that they are alienated and they are not like they feel that they are isolated. So, but I will see, I'll see how it unpacks at some point at a point of time, and because I have not finished interviewing them yet. And anyway, the balancing the regional identity with broader cultural belonging poses challenge. Obviously, like we know the word like hyphenated nationalism, so like British Bangladeshis, and it has become like a bit like British Siletis, this is like for the second generation, third generation they are, and as the generations like for the next generation, they will perhaps will not be even mentioning that they are from, their origin is from Bangladesh or from Sylhet. So, and the Sylhet again, this community in the UK stands out for its unique migration patterns, obviously, that I mentioned to you, and the cultural distinctness I mentioned already, and the sense of exceptionalism, and sometimes like a particular generation seem to be to be proud of the fact that they are exceptional, but at some point, and some of them, the feel that actually they are that is making them kind of fragmented, making them kind of alienated. So and this highlights the interplay between the regional, national, and transnational affiliations. As we continue to explore the diverse tapestry of Bangladesh diaspora, understanding the exceptionalism within communities like Sylheti diaspora enriches our appreciations of multifaceted nature of migration and identity. Like I mentioned to you that actually this talk is going to be sort of like unstructured, and sorry about that. And because like I said, it's still in the making, and there's identity things, the hyphenated nationality, these things are actually kind of new to me. And because when you talk about exceptionalism, we talk about the American exceptionalism, and applying that framework into this study is actually challenging still to me, but working on that. And I guess I stop here, and I'll be happy to take some questions and to elaborate. Maybe I'll not be in a position to answer to all of your questions, but anyway, but I'll be happy to address to your concerns, to your opinions, to your questions, or whatever. Thank you very much for for listening to me patiently.
Yeah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, sir. Anyone has any questions? You're welcome to post them on the chat or ask Professor Ehsan.
Sir, I have a few questions. My number one question is that, as you have said, that the most of the migration is toward UK and the Canada. and some toward Malaysia also, right? And the US also, right? So what it seems from there that the prospect of better economic gain is more than the like the similar culture, like being a Muslim country, like Malaysia offers a good environment. But in spite of that, they are moving to UK, US, and Canada. So what do you feel? Which is the more attractive force, financial or the cultural similarity?
Thank you very much. You see, the groups those who intend to move to Malaysia or the countries alike, and those who are moving or intending to move to the US or Canada and Australia or in the UK, they're totally different groups, right? And you may ask me what are the difference between these groups? Those who are moving to Australia to Malaysia, and with the fact knowing that they can settle in Malaysia in any way. And like in 70s and 80s, they had an idea that they can settle at some point of time in Malaysia if they married to a Malaysian. But actually, that was not the case. Many Bangladeshis I met, and they married with the hope that they will be able to gain their root at some point of time. They failed because the policy doesn't allow. And primarily, those who are moving to Malaysia, like 98%, are actually the migrant laborers. So the prospects of being settled or gaining root in Malaysia is not a valid and practical thing. And for those who are moving to the UK, if we talk about the contemporary migration, UK, United States, Australia, Canada, and for the majority, they have an intention in their mind, at the back of their mind, that they will be able to settle at some point of time because they are immigrant countries. They still have the policy, right? So they're very, very different thing. I don't know if this actually addresses the question that we're asking. And if not, then you can re-ask so I can be more, I can try to be clearer.
And second small question, my last question. I was roaming on the street of Lisbon, that is Portugal, and I saw a hotel with the board with a Taj Mahal photo, and it was mentioned there, Indian hotel. So I became very happy that on the in a European country, I'm going to get Indian food and I'm going to meet someone from the India. I was very happy. Okay, but when I went over there, I saw a Bangladeshi family running that restaurant. And that happened quite, more than a decade, around 15 years back, but I'm still not able to, it's not going to my head. So how do you explain this phenomenon?
There are, you can explain this actually in different ways and from different lenses. One is like, the same thing happened to me in the United States a number of times. I was hungry and I saw a Indian restaurant. I went there. At some point, some people approached me and I said they're actually Bangladeshis. And there and one of my actually distant relatives is working there. So if you see from business lens, because the Indian restaurant, if I open a restaurant in like in the US or in Canada, Bangladesh restaurant, nobody will go there. So you have the Indians, is a, how to say, I don't know, I forgot
In fact, I think this is the identity we inherit together. Entire South Asia countries, all countries, and this identity is, still alive.
And better marketability of the brand, like India is a bigger brand than the Bangladesh.
It's a cultural also, I think.
Yeah, that is one thing. And historical thing is like, because before 1947, right? So that was the time that, okay, Indian restaurant, Indian catering system or whatever, that they have not changed from that time, from India to Bangladesh. When the Bangladesh happened like in 1971. So if you look at the historical legacy, so it's because of that. And the market and people are generally but in the UK, what happens? The clients or the customers, or those who go to the restaurants, and they know that they are going to eat Bangladeshi food, but they are going to the Indian restaurant kind of thing. Name is Indian restaurant, but the Bangladeshi food. Like, so it's difficult to really to explain why is this happening. Maybe those who do research on business and like the more of like historical and the colonial thing, and it will be easy for us to understand this dynamic. But still, like, for example, now in the UK, around between 3,000 to 4,000 restaurants, right? And around 72% of the restaurants belong to Bangladeshis. 72% of the restaurants belong to Bangladesh. But the problem is, like, you will barely see that the restaurants are named as Bangladeshi restaurants, right? You see the name, it's a Bangla, yes, obviously, but by seeing the name, the Bangla, you can say it's Indian or Bangladeshi. With Bangladesh, it's Kolkata, like, for example, you also speak Bengali. That is difficult, but as you said, if you talk to the people who are serving and the managers, and the owners, they are Bangladeshis. So it's I don't know. This is a good point actually for me to add to the article. I will see how. I have to read more, I guess, on this to explain better. But I know that this doesn't answer very well, but it's an eye opener for me. Thank you for that.
So, Professor Ullah, can I ask you a question, please?
Please.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, over the last 2 decades, I mean, how do you examine and analyze the phenomenon of qualitative and quantitative change it has come up in the context of the Bangladeshi diaspora? Because I could see when I'm abroad that not anymore Bangladeshis do not really go for very minimum work. They're also professionals, and they are joining probably the mainstream, if we can be, I'm allowed to say, in those adopted societies. So do you see that is the phenomenon is proving to be economically very, very, if I can say, blissful for Bangladesh economy?
Good question. Thank you. And like, there's pros and cons, obviously. If you look at the contributions solely from economic point of view, is important, is blissful, yes. Because we see like our 10% of a GDP or 10 to 12% GDP is constituted by their remittances they are sending. So it's important, obviously. And now, these days, even government is like urging the people, Bangladeshi people living beyond Bangladesh, to send money to Bangladesh through legal source, so that could be added to GDP. So of course, it's important, and for the small economy, and Bangladesh has been relying on their like financial budget for the GDP heavily on the remittances. So if you ask me, like, is from economic point of view, it is important, it is blissful, but that's not the end. There are many other points that we really have to deduct. What are those? For example, like, I bring in this example from the Philippines, for example. Like, what is that? In the Philippines at the moment, 9 million children are being brought up without their parents. In Africa, like 23 million people are being brought up without their parents. 60 million children in China are being brought up without their parents. So we don't see that psychological cost, up front. But these are something, if we are happy with the economic contribution, we are happy, right? But there are many other things that we really need to take into consideration when you do kind of equation, is it good or bad? So it's difficult to answer, but yes, government and the central bank is always happy to see the money flowing in from abroad, from the migrants or diasporas. Yes, in that sense, yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
I noticed that there are several eminent scholars among us today. I noticed Professor Binod Khadria is here with us, Dr. Raj Bardoli, Dr. Rajiv Rautri, Dr. Iman Ahmed. I also notice Dr. Mahalingam is here. So may I request all of you to please come in and share a few words with us. Dr. Binod Khadria, can I invite you to please come and share a few words first? Thank you, sir.
So good to see.
Thank you so much. It was fascinating to listen to Professor Hasanullah and particularly to see him in person virtually, because I am familiar with the name and perhaps we had short communication also, exchange of emails, but this is the first time I have the opportunity of listening to him firsthand. It actually evokes a lot of memories. Myself coming from Assam, from northeast of India, which is just next door to Bangladesh. I have visited Bangladesh number of times. Some colleagues who are working on migration are there in Dhaka University. I don't want to elaborate on them, but to focus on what we heard today from Professor Sanullah. I think at one point in time, if we go, because he mentioned some of the statistics that he mentioned, historical statistics about Bangladesh is in United Kingdom. And he also mentioned about Assam and India's northeast and, Calcutta and so on. So we also have to remember that, bilateral diaspora. In fact, Bangladeshi bilateral diaspora was the largest in India. It was the largest, world's largest bilateral diaspora. That's how the United Nations had called it. So we have to keep that in mind. And when particularly talks about Sylhet, the district of Sylhet, Sylheti language, the dialect, and so on, it's there is a love-hate relationship between Bangladesh and West Bengal, particularly, that one has to keep in mind, because these are the characteristics of diaspora all over the world. Yes, when Indians or Bengalis or Assamese people and Bangladeshis meet outside India, they are best of friends. Bangladesh was a part of Pakistan at a point in time. And one also has to remember that now Bangladeshi cricket team is one of the world's best teams. At times has defeated Indians also. So we used to have, I have met Bangladeshi diaspora people in United Kingdom, and also Pakistanis, as earlier Pakistanis. They used to be best of friends. I mean, there used to be a joke saying that we are best of friends to the British people. They used to say that we are best of friends till we play cricket against each other. So these are some of the underlying currents of that love-hate relationship between the two countries and the two diaspora. But I must also say that he particularly mentioned about the culinary things, culinary, expertise of Sylhetis and the Bangladeshis. That, I think, goes back in history, pre-independence times much more. And that's why the Indian restaurants, actually are meant by or served in terms of their enterprise is actually by the Bangladeshi origin people. And in fact, Robin Cook, the British Foreign Secretary, is quoted number of times. In 2001, he said the British national dish is the chicken tikka masala. He declared that to be the British national dish. Now, who makes them? Is the Bangladeshi cooks who are experts in cooking chicken tikka masala in the so-called Indian restaurants. After post-independence, they did not change the name based on the identity of the country, but the culture, the Indian subcontinental culture. That's why I think it continues, this continuation takes. And we also have to look at the common history of the Indian subcontinent when we talk of Bangladeshis. For example, Qazi Nazrul Islam, he was a rebel poet from Bangladesh who wrote revolutionary poems which are recited at different, nationalist kind of functions and celebrations. So I'll not like to go on and give you a second lecture, but I must say that Professor Ahsanullah has shared with us perhaps 1% of the knowledge that he has about Bangladeshi diaspora, and there's much more that we probably can continue to learn from him about the subcontinent, about Bangladesh, about its relationship with the neighboring states in the northeast of India, including, I would say, West Bengal. And I would like to stop there. Thank you. I hope I have not disappointed by this intervention.
No. It's enlightening, actually. Thank you very much. And I'm really excited to see you. This is the first time, as we say. And good inputs, like I said, is the paper is actually in the making. So it's a good opportunity for me to open up. So that helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Binod. Dr. Raj Bardoli, may I request you, ma'am, to come and say a few words on this forum?
I think Dr. Raj is not here. Huh?
Okay.
No, she's there.
She's there? Okay.
But maybe connection issue. Maybe you can invite others.
Yeah.
She may have the audio issue, so you can.
Okay. Meanwhile, may I request Dr. Iman Ahmed to please say a few words? Dr. Iman Ahmed.
She was the student of Professor Ahsanullah.
Hi. First, I would like to greet Professor Ahsan. I was pleasantly surprised today. I must say Professor Ahsan was my university professor during my Master of Refugee Studies and my thesis advisor, and we just communicated very recently. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the GRFDT Thursday sessions. The talk, I found it to be very interesting, very informative. So thank you very much. And thanks, Professor Binod, as well, for adding these points. While you were talking, I was wondering, when you spoke about the specificity or exceptionalism of this community, and in my mind, I found myself trying to compare with the Sudanese diaspora and which group does that have such form of specificity, perhaps for different reasons. And what came to my mind was the Darfurians of Sudan. But in the case of Sudan, I think Darfurians have found themselves to be distinct, or they like to identify as, whenever you ask the person, automatically they say, I'm from Darfur. I think because of the history of human rights abuses, the atrocities that happened against the region, and historical grievances, I would say. So that must have contributed to this. And up until now, while the Sudan is going through this armed conflict and so on, some of our friends in the UK, in other countries, sometimes they express frustration that the world is not paying attention to the entire Sudan, and they only care about just Darfur. Even as a humanitarian network, we have an observation that there is a focus on just getting aid through Chad to that part of the country. When the war started, or the conflict started in Khartoum, the capital, which is in the middle of the country, and then spread to other cities. So generally, there is a sense, I would admit, that the world is not paying attention to the entire Sudan as much as it is to Darfur. Now, my question to you, Professor Ehsan, do you think there is any element of social class in this distinctiveness, or in people trying to identify themselves or set themselves apart? Is it socioeconomic even in the homeland, or it's basically the language and culture? Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. To see you after a long time. And good to see you. Good to see you. And yeah, and as you mentioned about Darfur, Sudan, you know better than I do about our African, diaspora, migrants, migration, refugees, conflict, so complex. Right? As you mentioned about the socioeconomic, I touched a bit upon that. If your question relates to the Siletis in the UK, I guess some of you know about Sylhet and some of you may not. Why it was interesting to me, primarily because if you go to Sylhet, you see, like we say, Sylhet is Bangladeshi Kuwait. Meaning Kuwait is a country in the Middle East, right? So we know it's a rich country, rich in oil, rich and like kind of thing. So it's a different kind of thing. And so Sylhet, if you go there, you don't see any thatched house, you don't see any broken, rundown house. Like it has become a kind of prestige for them, because Sylhet should be different from the other parts of Bangladesh, because the majority, like you will not perhaps find any house that looks kind of good, and there anybody from this house don't live in the UK. Meaning, like they, as you talk about socioeconomic status, they maintain that in the UK, at the same time they maintain that in their own country. And there is a class, there is a hierarchy. And if you talk to them, like they start talking to a certain generation, I have to look into that actually, a certain generation, they start talking in Sylheti to whoever you talk, to whoever you initiate any conversation. And to some generation, they start speaking in English. This is mostly for the third and next generations, obviously. And it relates to your socioeconomic conditions sometimes. Who are you, who you are. And whether you were born in the UK or you were born in Bangladesh and you moved to the UK at some point of time. So your socioeconomic conditions determines what language you start with to speak to someone. Your socioeconomic conditions starts like, where do you live? If you see that there is a movie, Brick Lane, if you have, I don't know, is totally based on that, but is focused on marriage and kind of thing, but it doesn't very much relate to that one. But if Iman, your question is like, if I see there is any socioeconomic class, there is, and it's distinct. It's very, very clear if you talk to them. And how do you know that? If there is a party, for example, you see there is a group, like those who are the owners of the restaurants, they have a separate party. Those who work in the restaurants, they have separate party, and they live in separate roads. So is you understand that if you are not invited there, it means you don't belong to them. So is distinct, is very, very clear. But like I said, I have to really explore more on that and to see, because I didn't live in the UK. I just talked to them. I read articles. That was what, but I have been talking to many, but only by talking, you don't really know, but it has to be like, I really have to talk to them with the research lens, then I'll be in a better position to answer to this. Does this somehow answers your question, Iman?
Yeah, very much. And it just like it gives more information and it makes me even more curious. So thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Ehsan, there are two questions in the chat. First is from Ms. Jyoti Tripathi. She asks, which concept is more important if we look at the question of identity, regional identity, that is at place of destination, or immigrant identity at place of origin?
Wow. Very, very good question. Like what I saw now is very difficult at the moment to answer, but I understand like regional identity is again, it varies according to the generation. For the first generation, for example, they would never say that they are the British. They would never say, you know, like if they don't need to, they will not say that they are British. This is the Sylhetis, you know. So this is one of the things. But in like if they mix with the British, I mean, in the country of destination, and they say yes, they are like that time they use like a hyphenated identity, Sylheti British or Bangladeshi British, some cases. So in terms of identity, like again I said, depends on who you are talking to. If you are talking to a Bangladeshi, or you are talking to a white British. If you are, and who you are, who are you, depends on that again. If you are a second generation or first generations, so it depends. But again, I'll be needing some more research on that, like because I can like based on the literature. What I said now is based on the literature, but what exactly is the reality on the ground? Then maybe I'll be needing some more time after I do some more research. Hope that kind of touches upon the question that you are asking. Thank you very much.
So the next question on the chat is from Ms. Smita Tiwari. She asks, what are the political roles of Bangladeshi diaspora in the home country, as well as their country of settlement? Are they well organized and well networked?
Oh, okay. What are the political roles of Bangladeshi diaspora in the home country? What happens currently, you'll see in Bangladesh, there are two major political parties. I start from that level, okay? And you'll see like, if you know the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, and Bangladesh Awami League, BAL, and they have the representatives there. And when any and the prime ministers go there for a visit or whatever, and you'll see they are received first by Bangladeshi community, Bangladeshi diaspora, right? So meaning that there is a political, they maintain a political network, political connections, right? There's a one level. And if you ask like what are the political roles of Bangladeshi diaspora in the home country, do you mean like in the country of origin? I think so. I mean, it is very important. They are playing different kinds of roles and different levels. Say, I have noticed this one for the last 15 years. We have a particular, we have the government, the same government from the same political parties. And we see with the political turmoil or the fluctuations of political temperature, our remittances, like fluctuates. And the government knows that sometimes, like, for example, there are some campaigns like, okay, you don't send remittance at the moment because government is spending money lavishly on the purposes that actually doesn't serve any citizenry purposes. So you see sometimes the remittances, the level goes down, and sometimes it goes up, right? Meaning that it has a political connections. It has a political meaning, and sometimes, how to say, this is one way for a political role in economy. And direct political connections are like sometimes the British, the diaspora, they want nominations from the particular government to be a member of the parliament. So for this kind of reasons, they maintain, I don't know if the discussion is going to a different direction, as well as the country of settlement. I see some Bangladeshis became the mayors of London, you know, like I see their role there, but how does this really play in the political level? I'm not very sure yet, but like I said, that I have to really look at that. And are they well organized and well networked? They're well organized. That is understandable. I understand that. They're well organized. They're very, very well connected. And like I said, there are many, at the moment, even 4 Bangladeshis are the member of parliament there. And I understand that. And yeah, like I have few questions. I know that I can't really touch upon all this deeply, but I'm taking notes of all of the questions, and whether that will be important for me for the paper as well. Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that I couldn't really touch because that was also the political things also are not very much and a focus of the research.
I noticed that Mr. Mehdi Hassan had his hand raised.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Hassan, do you wish to come in and ask the question? Mehdi Hassan, would you like to come in and ask your question?
Hi, this is Mehdi. Thank you so much, sir, for listening. It's always been an honor to listen to you. My question was, during my exchange semester in Norway, I noticed that some of the Norwegian who are the second generation, so they used to introduce themselves as like, we are from Palestinian Norwegian. So it seems to me that their individual contribution to, like, because Palestine is a huge issue, it always has been discussed. So that's why they always they wanted to keep this identity. So do you think that the Bangladeshi community, as they also introduce themselves as Sileti, is they also want to keep this identity like this? Because like the contribution of Sylhet to UK seems to me is little bit more compared to the contribution of whole other cities of Bangladesh or whole Bangladesh. Am I understand? Did you get my question?
Is the question that if the Bangladeshi diaspora in the UK is going to be using an identity of Sylheti kind of thing, or if you can simplify, because it was a bit broken. Yeah, so.
Okay, the thing I have to say, they are introducing themselves as a Sylheti, but not as a Bangladeshi Sylheti or Bangladeshi. So is it because like people know Sylhet better than Bangladesh? Is it like Sylhetis have more contribution to the UK society compared to the rest of the Bangladeshi cities? Is it something like that?
Yeah, good question. And I believe the reason is like, because Sylheti, they are very, very distinct from the other districts, primarily because of their like language. Like I said, if I even meticulously listen to them, I understand like not more than 10%. So that could be one of the reasons. And that could be one of the reasons that why they want to keep themselves like, exceptional. And like I said, like again, depends on the generation again. Like for example, for the first generation, they always want to connect them with their origin. So I don't see any decline in their identity kind of thing. But again, for the third and fourth generation, and they don't want to talk about Sylhet. They want to say, "Oh, I'm British actually." And sometimes, and I remember for 2 of the respondents, they were even angry that when I mentioned that you are originally from Sylhet, right? And they were angry. They don't want to be identified as a Sylheti, but depends again. But I have to see really like if they are, which generations, we understand that as generation goes by, like the identity, the origin declines slowly. But I have to see actually like who are the generation, what are the generations will be more comfortable introducing them or identifying them as Sylhetis or British or Bangladeshis. But for overall, for all the generations, they are more comfortable to say that they are Sylhetis, rather than Bangladeshis. So this is why I see some of the questions that came from like if the regional identity is more important for them than the national identity.
Hello, this is Dr. Mahalingam. Sorry to come in now. Good evening, sir. Thank you for a nice presentation. It was very enlightening about Bangladesh diaspora. My question is, for example, I like to know about the distinction between the old Bangladesh diaspora and new Bangladesh diaspora, how they attach towards home country. Because it's a long migration from Bangladesh to various parts of the world. I think there is a binary between the old Bangladesh diaspora and the new Bangladesh diaspora. So how far the old and new one, they are attached towards the home country, that is Bangladesh. My second question, in the context of Malaysia, I see, I myself have worked on Malaysia. So I observed the Bangladesh diaspora, mostly the unskilled, and they'll come here, they get married with local Malays. And what is their cultural identity and how are they accepted in back home, or how, like, what is their status today? I like to know from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. By definition, when you talk about diaspora, by definition, they have to have a kind of connections with the country of origin. This is by definition, right? So, and now it depends on what kind of connections you are having. Like, for example, I did a research a couple of months ago and it was published, like academic diaspora, for example. I have seen that the fundamental point for them to be connected with the country of origin, they do research only, but like 90% of the academics that are living outside, they do research on Bangladesh. It means this is one way for them to get connected with their own country, right? And because sometimes they think that they are blamed for not contributing much to the economy, but they argue that no, we are connecting actually, we are contributing academically. Of course, you see the Bangladeshi academics that who are working outside, and most of them the published and the books or articles and based on the research that done on Bangladesh. This is one of the way for them to connect. It's not connecting only just sending money, connecting with the politics, connecting with the relatives, calling them on them. It's not about it. It's about like what kind of contributions you are making to their country of origin. So depends on that. And like you said, is old diaspora and new diaspora. We call it like, okay, the first generation, second generation diaspora, obviously. But is the question like you are asking, how do the new to you term, like new diaspora, what are the difference between the connections they make between these two diaspora community? That is what you mentioned, Dr. Mahalingam?
Yes, my thing is, the degree of attachment, like, how far, for example, you said old diaspora, they may be supporting academic growth. The degree of attachment, that's what I want to know. How far they connected back to homeland in terms of the ties, financially, economically, academically, that's what my question.
Thank you. No, I understand that now. The thing is, like I said, one connection I said is by definition they are connected, right? And there is established theory, like as the definition as you go down to the like from first to second, third, fourth generations, the connections tend to decline. That is natural. And if the diaspora, like at some point of time, they settle in the country of settlement, what happens? They need to invest more for them to get root in the country of settlement. Meaning, when you have to buy a house, you have to send your kids to schools, this and that, and you have to establish yourself in the country of origin, country of settlement. Meaning that because resource is limited, your economic connections connections declines in the country of origin, because you can't really make a balance. So this is why the theory came into the fact that as the generations goes down and your connections with the country of origin declines. So that is natural. That happens. So it means, to answer your question, like the old diaspora in your term, their level of connections or the degree of connections get old as well in your term. Right? This is how it is. At least economic, economic term. And some are sometimes individual basis, sometimes the individual basis, like, okay, you are an individual, you really want to connect, to get connected with your friends, you don't want to, you want to lose them, you don't want to lose the roots in your own country. Individual to individual varies. But overall, as time goes by, like I said, for fourth generation, they want to be identified as the citizens of the country they're settled in. The first generation is different, right? So this is how it is. If I can show, hope I had the slide. So yeah, that is, if that answers your question, I hope it does. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, my second question is about Malaysia. How, like, the unskilled laborers in Malaysia, because they come to Malaysia and they just mostly, I mean, because they want to obtain a job, so they get married to local Malays because they have same religious identity. But what about their status back home, like how they are, accepted back home, like, because and how they are treated in Malaysia, all that I want to know from you, because you observe Malaysia very closely. So I like to know from you about
Yeah, it's
current contemporary.
Oh, sorry. You're asking the question how they are accepted in the country of origin or country of destination?
Yeah, both ways, like how they are accepted in Malaysia also, because, and also back home.
Like what happens, Malaysia again is exception in some senses. There is a term they call like Orang Bangla. Is a derogatory term. Orang Bangla, Orang is an orang utang, you know that, right? So when they see, I don't know how did this come into being, in fact, because majority, the overwhelming majority of Bangladeshis that who go to Malaysia, they're, like you said, the workers, right? Laborers. So they are, their status is sometimes painful, in the sense, but now I know that there is the huge number, and out of I don't know exactly how many are actually there at the moment in Malaysia, but a huge percentage actually without any legal documents, primarily because they seek help from the agents, and the agents first bring them to Thailand, and they are supposed to take like around 3.5 hours to get to Malaysia from Dhaka. But for many of them that I interviewed in many of my researches, they took like around 3 months in Malaysia, in Thailand, then in Chiang Mai, then in Shankla, then in Narathirat, then again, back and forth. At some point of time, they had to cross the sea, or they go through go through the mountains. And at some point of time, they are like thrown into Malaysia at the border without any documents. It's a huge number. I'm talking like I can't generalize because it's a huge number, right? And when they are without documents, and that is one thing. Another thing is like many are overstaying, because they know that if they go back, they will not be able to come back again. And why they try to stay back, the reason is the money they spend on migration, it is impossible for them to recoup the money within the time because salary is low and the exorbitant amount of money they spend on the migration. Because they had to like borrow money from different sources, from banks, from friends, and selling lands and this and that, and all the assets. And it's huge money, and they have to pay money at different points because they're handed over at different points of handed over to agents at different points, and all the time they have to pay money. At the end, they are indebted, and it is impossible for them to repay the money within 2 years in the majority cases, right? Because here governance issues come in. Obviously, we're not talking about it. So this to answer your question is answering your question is difficult because these people are actually coming in Malaysia from different sources, from different ways, and the result is like, this is why I started saying like they're considered as, and they're termed by Malaysians like Orang Bangla is a derogatory term. There's one thing, right? And in Bangladesh, in the back home, there was a television, shows like how they are actually accepted because they are not good sender. They're not earning well. And you understand, like from the individual, as individual, if I'm not a good source of money, how should I be seen and taken by our family members? And there are like around in the last 5 years, according to some data, like more than 100,000 families got like they got divorced because they were not able to go back. They were not able to support their families, and the wives, some of them and they can't really bring their wives in to Malaysia because recently they have changed policies now. Like if your income was a certain level income, then you are able to bring your families. And now they have raised that bar. Now it has become even more difficult for them to bring in their other family in Malaysia. So because of these changes in the policies, and it's impossible actually for them, for the migrant labor to bring their families, meaning they are kind of detached, physically with their family members, with their parents and the wives, like more than 100,000 in the last 5 or 7 years. According to the BMET data, like more than 100,000 divorces have happened, and and the migrants here in Malaysia, they also got like involved in the relationship with the Indonesians, with the Filipinos, kind of things. So these are so anyway, I'm going to different direction. I better stop here. Thank you.
So the fact that we've really overshot our time by almost 20 minutes is testimony to the fact that this was such an interesting discussion. So thank you so much, Professor Ehsan, for this lovely discussion and for taking out time for us. I know you're pretty tired after your long journey, so I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I think we can call it a day. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this seminar. Dr. Ehsan, this was really a wonderful talk on the long history of Bangladeshi migrants in the UK and also the Sylheti diaspora in the UK. I'm sure my classmates and professors would agree that we learned a lot from you today. I would also like to thank Professor Binod Khadria, Dr. Raj Bardoli, Dr. Rajiv Rautere, Dr. Iman Ahmed, Dr. Mahalingam from the SGT University for joining us today. Also a big thank you to our collaborators, the GRFDT and CISAN. And once again, Professor Ehsan, thank you for taking out time for us and giving us this talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm very, very, very pleased to see many known faces by name, and the
It's
Iman.
almost
And
11:30 for you, and thank you so much.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Sometimes
Good to
again.
see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Very-
Prof.